Every once in a while, companies will try to make a Halo phone, the best phone you'll want to buy. This is the second year of Samsung doing that, and if you wanted to get one, this might be your year. Still, this does come with its downsides, so let's talk about it. This is my review of the Samsung S21 Ultra, the modest ultimate flagship. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review. Check out the social media listed above if you want to talk tech, and subscribe if you want to continue watching tech. Let's get started. Being a second generation Ultra, I believe Samsung got the display right this year. Similar to the transition from the Galaxy Fold to the Galaxy Z Fold 2, Samsung almost perfected this screen. It is slightly smaller at 6.8 inches, but that's not that much of a difference from the S20 Ultra. This year we get 120Hz for the refresh rate, but you can do that at 1440p. Finally, is what I initially thought. After using this phone though, it seemed like it picked 60Hz most of the time, while I was forced to remind myself that this was 120Hz, but it is adaptive. This means that the phone chooses what the refresh rate is going to be depending on what app you're in or if it's dealing with battery savings. I generally use this phone with an iPhone, yet it wasn't too noticeable that the S21 Ultra screen is supposed to be twice as fast. This is probably due to the phone being so fast in general that the high refresh rate becomes barely noticeable. Either way, I'm glad that Samsung allowed for this feature. Like I said, this is a 6.8 inch almost flat dynamic OLED panel at 1440p, giving us 516 pixels per inch, 7 more than the S20 Ultra. The hole punch is still in this phone, and I am indifferent on its placement. It is so high up that it isn't too noticeable, and honestly doesn't really interrupt most of the content I view. And when viewing content, wow. This is possibly the best screen on a Samsung phone for a reason, and you'll never run into any issues with the content, especially with that 120Hz refresh rate. The screen is flat, but it is slightly curved at the end. It is nice because it makes screen protectors fit a little bit better, and yes, I do have one on there, because the Gorilla Glass Victus can still scratch, so I'll protect my investment. Just like normal, we get double tap to wake, double tap to sleep, and the always on display. Last thing I want to mention is that the brightness is somewhere near 900 nits normally, maxing out at 1500 nits for outdoor usage. Something that hasn't been an issue in the Galaxy S line since the S6. Oh, I have to mention that the on-screen fingerprint scanner is an ultrasonic one, being bigger than last year and apparently more likely to read properly, but I personally never use it because face detection is fine for me, and having a screen protector makes scanning difficult. With that said, I wish more apps would allow face detection to authenticate, because most of them require your fingerprint. This phone is the best of the best when it comes to the internal specs, but there still are some questionable areas. We have the Snapdragon 888 chip with 12GB of RAM, which runs flawlessly on this phone, for now. The storage is UFS 3.1, which is faster than the UFS 3.0 that was found in the previous Ultra, but this year there's no memory card. Not a huge deal, but the base model is 128GB, which isn't much in my eyes for a phone with Ultra in its name. Hopefully in 2022, Samsung pulls the same move that they did with the S6 and the S7 by removing and adding back the SD card slot, but I doubt they'll do that. Also, this is annoying to me because you have phones like the Note 10, S10 5G, and pretty much all foldable phones that Samsung sells that lack memory card slots but start at 256GB of storage. Honestly, I feel like the stock storage could have been higher and they could have kept either the same or a cheaper price than the Note 20 Ultra. Either way, let's end my rant on the lack of the memory card slot. Oh yeah, something that could have gone in the screen section is that this phone does have S Pen support. But the nice thing about this is that Samsung actually helps the customer on this one. There is a specific pen and case that you can buy for this phone, which honestly is kind of annoying to me, but the funny thing is that the pen can't charge, so it lacks the wireless features like the Note 9 through the Note 20 series gave us with the Bluetooth features. Also, pretty much any S Pen works on this phone. For me, I've been using ones like the Note 5 pen, which is really cheap, so if I lose it, who cares? But I've tested the Note 2, Note 3, Note 7, just kidding, Note 8, and the Note 10, and all those pens seem to work for this phone. This is something that I'm actually surprised that Samsung allows because it sort of benefits the customer. As for the power of this phone, it is kind of strange. We still get the 5000 mAh battery that's found in the S20 Ultra, but it is definitely needed for this phone, lasting through the day but questionable for 2-day battery life with light to medium usage. As for charging, it's the same as the S20 Ultra, super fast charging, fast wireless charging, and reverse wireless charging, but the wired charging only maxes out at 25 watts. This is strange, but in most cases 45 watt charging phones don't really make too much of a difference over 25 watt charging phones, but still, it's a weird omission. As for the design of the phone, we get glass on the front and back, as expected, with a nice matte finish on the back, and an aluminum mid-frame. Personally, I'm not a fan of it being shiny, but it's whatever. On the top, there are 2 holes. I believe both are for the microphone for some reason. The left side has nothing, while the right side is where the volume and power buttons are. Yep, we can still disable Bixby semi-permanently. Rejoice. Then on the bottom, we get another microphone, single SIM slot, USB-C 3.2 port, and a bottom loudspeaker. As expected, you get stereo sound from the top and bottom speaker, and as usual, it gets better and better every year, sounding louder and fuller. Lastly, there are little things that have been added and removed from this phone. There were more 5G bands added to this phone, allowing for better support and a higher chance of making this phone last a long time. Like they removed the memory card slot, Samsung apparently removed MST for Samsung Pay on this phone, yet I was not able to confirm how true that is. Also, it's still listed on their spec page for this phone, so I don't know how true that is. This phone did also gain some weight, which might be due to the cameras, bringing the phone to a heavy 229 grams, even though it is smaller than the 222 gram S20 Ultra in every aspect. Now this is where it gets interesting. Easily, we want to compare this to the S20 Ultra, but the interesting thing is that Samsung actually slimmed down on this phone, but also didn't. This year, we get a standard wide-angle lens, a special ultra-wide, 3x telephoto, and another 10x telephoto sensor. Both of those telephoto sensors being optical zoom. Samsung has gone for a modest touch, giving us a 108 megapixel wide-angle sensor, like last year, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor that does focus, and 2 10 megapixel telephoto sensors, one having a field of view of 35 degrees and the other being 10 degrees, the latter being f4.9 for the aperture. As far as it's been explained to me, the standard lens is the only one with optical image stabilization, but every sensor on this phone has autofocus, not to mention that there is a laser autofocus unit in this array. Clearly, this phone is the top of the line for Samsung, so images are going to come out looking outrageous during the day or night. The funny thing is that while I would say that the overall setup is better than the S20 Ultra, the overall zooming aspect is a mixed bag, with the S20 Ultra looking better in some, but the S21 Ultra looking better in others. Overall, I would take the S21 Ultra over the S20 Ultra because of the stabilization that Samsung introduced for far zooming photos. Oh wait, that's just software and was actually given to the S20 Ultra as well. Either way, most images come with more appropriate HDR as well as better detail when zoomed in on the S21 Ultra. As for video, 4K 60 frames per second will work for most people, but there is still some weird stabilization thing that the camera does, while 8K 24 frames per second video is still pretty much useless. I'm not going to change this to an 8K video, so if you want to see the full sample, I'll leave the video in the description below. Personally, it's not usable. Moving to the front, we have a single 40 megapixel sensor like last year, which doesn't seem like it really changed. It is focusable and supports 4K 60 frames per second video, which is nice, and overall you get some really good shots from the sensor. But when we're talking about the rear cameras, standard 108 megapixel shots are super detailed, but normal shots are just like 10 or 12 megapixel shots depending on the zoom. As for the zoom, I would say that 30 times is more usable than last year, but zooming to 10 times is outstanding and something I enjoyed using even when I didn't even need it. Personally, I'm not disappointed by these sensors. I just hope that one day 8K video will hit at least 30 frames per second so we can actually use it. When you hear the word Ultra, most of the time you think Ultimate, best of the best. And for this phone, it is mostly true. We get the best processor for an Android phone, 12 gigabytes of RAM, 1440p 120Hz display that looks outstanding, 5000 mAh battery, and a very capable camera setup, along with many other little things. But we aren't left with a true Ultra phone. It seems like there's just some things, like the SD card situation, where Samsung decided to choose what they want to consider Ultra. I'll give it to them that this is a very desirable phone, one that I would love to keep just for the camera setup alone, but there is little corner cutting and price dropping that reminds you that Samsung controls how the phone is going to be, not you. Now, is an SD card worth dropping the price down $200? Not at all. But adding smaller sensors, cutting out MST, limiting charging speed, and other little things that we can't see on the surface do add to cost savings for Samsung. Using 128GB for an Ultra phone, while the often criticized Note 10 started at 256GB, is something to think about as well. Overall, you can call this an Ultra phone, but it doesn't seem like the no compromises Note 20 Ultra that Samsung users have come to love. Personally, I think that this is an outrageously good phone. I just want people to understand that it's not perfect. With this said, it is already easy to find this phone for $900 or less, and at that price, this is kind of a steal when compared to phones like the iPhone 12 Pro Max or even the Note 20 Ultra. Of course, this is assuming that you're okay with not having a memory card slot. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Thanks for watching my review of the S21 Ultra, the phone I hope that the Z Fold 3 will copy. I'm glad to see that you made it this far, seeing that this is actually longer than most of my reviews that I do. But, as always, thanks for watching.